Welcome to the 2020 IAAO conference and hello from Mountrail County, North Dakota. Unfortunately, we cannot be in Denver and meeting face to face. Yet with this virtual format, we can actually take you into our homes, workplaces, and in this case, a canola field. Earlier in its growth, canola sprouts with beautiful yellow flowers, as you can see here. And if next to a flax field that turns purple, the view is simply stunning. But how do we value this land? By prettiness? Or some parts of this land is better than others, so could be different values. I'm Rory Porth, a Class 1 property assessor in North Dakota. This session, Project Back to the Future, Agricultural Land Valuation in Mountrail County, North Dakota, should be interesting even if you do not value land. We will see a little video, see some pictures of the area, and discuss how we got to this point in ag land valuation. We will have spreadsheets, maps, and we will have fun along the way. So sit back, relax, and I need to get back inside for the rest of this presentation, so watch this short video while I skedaddle my way back home. Thank you. Welcome back. I hope you liked that video. It's pretty cool and pretty fun. This is Project Back to the Future, Ag Land Valuation in North Dakota. We're going to be moving on here and taking a look. But first, starting out, what is very unique about this picture? There's a hint. It's the Apollo 11, the Eagle lunar lander returning to the command module from the historic first moonwalk. This is an esoteric question for you. The astronaut who took this photo, Command Module pilot Michael Collins, is the only human, alive or dead, that isn't in the frame of this picture, July 1969. So you just think about it. That is a very lonely place to be. Kind of like a North Dakota property assessor giving this presentation at IAAO. So our journey. I'm going to have a quick bio here, Class 1 property assessor in Mountrail County. We mentioned that. I'm relatively new to the role. Previously was a complex systems integrator and consultant, and I had a certification, the CISA, Certified Information Systems Auditor from IAAO. But we're going to be talking about the journey here. Where or what is Mountrail County? A few pictures, the Bakken, oil and natural gas production that does play a role in ag land valuation. Then we're going to talk about the valuation, a little history and lots of work, maps, numbers, spreadsheets, what we did and where we are. First off, the fam. Wife and I have been married since 1992. That's a long time. We have 3 daughters, all adopted from Irkutsk, Russia. This is just a picture when we went out to Orlando, Florida. We went out to the happiest place on earth. Yes, Kennedy Space Center. Mountrail County is in North Dakota, and it's in the northern part of North Dakota. It's the 9th largest county by square miles. It's just over 1,800 square miles. And that's 4,700 square kilometers for our international friends. Population is roughly 10,200 plus. That's in 2017, the census. The density is approximately 5.6 persons per square mile, or 2.2 people per square kilometer. So in this age of social distancing, North Dakota has been social distancing before social distancing was cool. What it looks like is a lot of this, a lot of prairie, a lot of fields out there. We have cropland, obviously. We have oil well sites out there. There's lots of sloughs, whereas Minnesota, our neighbor, is the land of 10,000 lakes. North Dakota is the land of 10,000 sloughs. The Bakken. North Dakota is the #2 oil producer in the United States. And if you look up here in this map on the left, that is Mountrail County. We are in the heart of the Bakken. The Bakken is this large area. The Bakken is the blue line around here, and then the red area is the Williston Basin province boundary. And as you can see on the right-hand slide, these are all different oil wells and what their production is. And Mountrail County is right in the heart of this area here. So you can see there's a lot of oil activity, and why that is going to play a part in ag land valuation going forward. We'll look at that here in a little bit. And what does it look like? You see we have a bunch of oil well sites that can range from 5 acres to 20 acres that take actual land away from production for cropland. And we can have many horsehead pumps on these one sites. The one on the bottom right, that's 18 horsehead pumps, 18 individual wells with laterals that are going in a bunch of different directions. So there's a lot of production going on in Mountrail County. Winter temperatures. You're going to learn a North Dakota Norwegian word. There's a lot of Norwegian folks up here that settled up here, and ufta. And ufta is a Norwegian word for ufta. And as you can see, these are temperatures that I've taken on my cell phone when we had some cold days. These are in Fahrenheit. I'll do a conversion here in a moment for our international friends, but it can get very cold, and there's wind, so we have wind chill warnings and wind chill factors that can greatly get us. This is my backyard. A couple of my dogs, I borrowed my uncle's bobcat, or my brother-in-law's bobcat, excuse me, and we had to clear out the backyard for the dogs. So you can see there's a lot of snow there. The wind chill warning, you can see on this one day it was 56 below zero, and equivalency for international units in Celsius, that's -48. So even though it was a nice balmy 26 below, it can get very cold with the wind chill. And so that's why maybe it's pretty sparse population up here in North Dakota. So let's get into the valuation side. We're going to be talking about the ag land valuation. And in comparison in 2020 values, we have 4 areas that we evaluate in our department. There's 3 of us right now. We have ag land, residential, commercial, and vacant land. And whereas ag land is over 9,000 parcels, that's almost 60% of our parcel percentage, it is approximately 30% of our true and full value in valuations. So let's just quickly go through some land valuation definitions, how we're going to be talking about this. A county is the largest administrative division of a state. A township, in those blocks, colored blocks, there are individual townships. It's an approximately 36 square mile division of land used in the federal rectangular survey system. That's basically 93.23 square kilometers. A section, one of those blocks, is a unit of land approximately 1 mile square and normally containing 640 acres, as laid out by the government survey. A parcel is a contiguous area of land described in a single legal description or as a number of lots on a plat. And you can see the parcels on the right. And there's no consistent size for a parcel. They can be very small, down to 1 acre or less, up to 160 acres or more. So ag land in North Dakota must be based on the soil type, whether detailed or general. And we get that soils information from the NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We implement from our state university average values, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, by the soil type for agricultural land valuation. Our state tax department has an ag land valuation guide and certification guide. The one on the top is the guide to assessing ag land value in North Dakota. Basically, this is how you do it. And then ever so often you have to prove that you're doing it the way they want you to do it, and that's the certification guide down below. It's basically prove it to us. So the two methods that we use, the first method is called breakpoint. It's generalized use. It's focused on productivity index of the soil. The better quality soils are considered cropland. Lower quality soils are considered non-cropland, and it's much simpler to implement. The other method that's used is the actual land use. This uses a GIS to map land use acres and productivity index of the soils. GIS is used to draw in land use, which is cropland or non-cropland, oil well sites, residences, those types of things. It is much more complex and time-consuming to implement, but it is the most precise. So in North Dakota, each year farmers send in information on their productivity and information like that to NDSU, and they calculate a capitalized average annual gross return. It basically is an Olympic average of the last X number of years. They throw out the high and the low. There's a capitalization rate that gets put in there, and they deliver to us each year based off of the previous year's production 3 numbers. They give us a average agricultural land value, and then a cropland value and a non-cropland value. And that's good, we get 3 numbers, but now the question is, how much of the cropland and non-cropland goes where? How do we make this equitable? We need to know how many cropland and non-cropland acres and other types of land use and soil quality wrapped in there. And on the right, as you can see here, what we do here is we take the average acre value and then calculate it out by our total acres, agricultural acres, and we come up with a value, and then that is the threshold that we have to meet going and spreading out the values. So we get the soils data from the NRCS Web Soil Survey. This is an online service that you can go and pull the data for your state and your county. And it does give us information. It gives you lots of information that's out there. But the things that we're focusing in on is the soil name and the soil code, its productivity index, pounds of forage for that soil type, which is used for the animal unit month calculation for the non-cropland side. And then Mountrail County has 150 different soil types. So in 2017, we implemented the easier method called the breakpoint method. And so basically, this chart represents your better soils are on the top, and it goes down to poorer soils. Now remember, I mentioned we have 150 different soil types in Mountrail County. All I did was kind of organize these into steps of 10, just kind of showing the breaks. If I had a chart with 150 on there, it'd be kind of hard to read. And so our 2017 values were arrayed in here. There's a weighted average worksheet that you use to calculate out your values for every single soil type. But with breakpoint, you take a point on the line, and we chose 50, where anything above 50 is considered cropland. Anything at 49 or below is considered not cropland, and that is irregardless of how the actual land is being used. And so you can see on the left-hand side, we have values for the cropland based off of its productivity index here. Remember, there can be a bunch of different ones in between here. And then, but because it's not considered crop, there's no values here. Anything below the line, there's no valuations on the cropland side. And then on the non-cropland side, it's all calculated out. But please note, in between 50 and 49, there's a difference between the soil types at $269, which kind of added a little bit of confusion into our process when we did this in 2017. So we implemented the breakpoint method in 2017. We processed new ag land values. This is a different method for the county. It changed historical ag land values. We updated 8,900 plus parcels. We sent out these things called notices of increase, North Dakota notice of increase. These are love letters that basically say you have had a $3,000 plus increase in valuation, and it's 10% or more of previous value. We did send out 3,000 letters on this. We also had minimal communication with the public. We only put one small article in the paper, and we consider this to be our bad. The result? Confusion, some angst, some happy, some very unhappy vocally. There was contention. These are actual snips from our paper in 2017 when we were gearing up for the equalization, that a lot of people went against us. At our County Board of Equalization meeting in June, there was 60 plus individuals protesting their ag land values. This was a lot of fun. Let's just say it was not enjoyable to go through that. So let's just step back and let's look at ag land valuation. Each parcel, and this is just one section here on the right hand side, each parcel has various soil types within it, and you can see on this map these white line, or the yellow lines, excuse me, show the different soils that are in there, and each soil type has a productivity index associated with it. You can see here's a PI of 69 and here's a PI of 16. The higher the productivity index, the better the quality of the soil for cropland utilization. The lower the PI, the worse it is for utilizing it for cropland. Higher PIs are better soil. Higher PIs have a higher dollar value applied. Lower PIs have a lower dollar value applied. In 2017, again, we mentioned we used the North Dakota State approved breakpoint method in setting these values. We did not use actual land use. And in the June 2017, the County Board of Equalization meeting, that was oh so much fun, voted to utilize actual land use for valuation. So the name of this project was, we went back to the 2016 land values, the previous one, for the future of actual land use. Project Back to the Future. So just over 2 years ago, this is my whiteboard at work. We are asking the questions, how do we do this? This is a challenge for us as we're embarking into very, very new ground. So let's bound the problem. There's much to keep track of in Mountrail County. Mountrail County is comprised of 55 townships, 7 cities, over 1,800 sections, just about 1,048,000 ag-related acres, 8,900 plus ag-related parcels, 2,200 ag-related parcel owners, and 150 different soil codes with values applied. Again, we have to derive 2 values, one for crop, one for non-crop. We have to know where those soils are. And then how is each parcel being used? Is it cropland, non-crop land, farmsteads, commercials, gravel pits, roads, oil well sites, saltwater disposal, etc.? Question is, how do you eat an elephant? Obviously, one bite at a time. The answer is to utilize a GIS system, Geographical Information System, and the problem was we were very new to GIS. Education was needed for our office and for our constituents. So just a brief on geographic information systems. For those of you who may not be too familiar with them, basically if you think about it, it's a map and you just layer different types of information on top of it. And when you look at those, when they're drawn in on top of each other, you can look at different spatial trends or relationships often emerge. So if you think about the almanac, if you carry a map almanac in your car, you can look at it. They'll give you cities, they'll give you states, they give you rest stops, they give you mountains and those types of things. Each one of those can be considered a different layer. So our project plan was to get GIS software in-house, the ArcMap desktop. We also got ArcMap Publisher for sharing maps within the office and then with others, and then Sidwell Farms. Sidwell is our GIS vendor, and they have a program that then calculates. We'll talk about that in a moment. We did form a soils committee, and on that soils committee were a couple of the folks who were very much our opponents in the breakpoint method. And that turned out actually to be a very good thing, because then we could develop and gain trust while we were working through this process for actual land use. We developed, defined and approved a drawing rule set. We also did a valuation rule set, drafted and approved, and it was drafted by our department, went through the soils committee and explained, and then also went to our county commissioners for final approval. All phases started in July 2017. We started drawing with Sidwell with a pre-pilot, a pilot section, and then drawing in by tier. And then what does it look like when it's all drawn in? It looks like this. This is our county. And as you can see, defined, anything in green is considered cropland, i.e. green grows, so cropland grows. Anything in brown or beige is considered non-cropland. Now I want to park on this map for a little bit and have you take some ownership, because we're going to come back and look at this map in a couple of different ways utilizing GIS technology. I want you to pick a favorite spot on the map of your own. And I like to point people out here up in the upper right in Lowland Township. Notice there's this triangle here that's kind of green, and then it goes into the brown, into the non-crop. Up here in the upper right hand corner, you see like two little fingers. I've been told by a geologist they're called fluviolent veins, and I have no clue what that means. But we're gonna look at that. I want you to look in this area here. In these townships, notice this non-cropland area here, this larger area of non-crop. We can go down south to the very bottom to Mountrail County, or Mountrail Township, and you look at this little curve. There's going to curve here. Also here between Plaza, Model, and Partial, notice there's also lots of non-crop in this area. So pick your favorite spot, kind of remember it, and then we're going to come back and look at this map in a little bit. The tier delivery started in fall 2017. The county was delivered in February 2018. We did some aerial photography updates, and even since then we have even high quality aerial photography from 2019. And it was used for our first equalization process, which was last year, and this is our second year using this. So when we did a drawing rule set, here's an example. Oil well sites were somewhat problematic. The North Dakota Century Code, which is the law of the land in North Dakota, basically says any ag property used for oil, natural gas, or subsurface minerals must continue to be assessed as ag property for the remainder of the life that it's there. And you can see these oil well sites are within cropland. But the challenge was, where the oil site was put down, was it cropland or non-cropland before that? Some parcels found oil well sites partially on crop, partially on non-cropland. It was very difficult to manage those acres. So a simplified approved decision, because you can't grow anything on top of those oil well sites, is all oil site acreage will be valued as non-cropland based off of the soil types underneath that oil well site. And that does include the road leading to the oil well site. Another couple of examples of rule sets: farmsteads and modifiers. Farmsteads are considered non-crop and are valued at non-cropland value based off of the soils underneath the farmstead. And I put this example up here because it came very personal to me. This is my sister-in-law's farmstead here. And if you notice, if breakpoint method, because that's a PI of 76, and then down here PI of 60 where her house sits, this whole area would have been considered cropland even though there's no cropping going on underneath that. Over here in this area, this is her son's house, who farms a lot of the area and was actually the farmer of the canola field I was standing in earlier. Notice he's at a PI of 43. Our break point was 50, and so he had his land valued at non-cropland values. So you can see that added confusion to the mix just based off of how the method worked. And also, there's these concepts of modifiers. If you use breakpoint method, you can come under here and then get reductions in the value based off of what's on there, what's on that, if you use breakpoint method. With actual land use, modifiers are not necessary and are not used in Mountrail County. And we look at this. If there's a public road there, we have it drawn out as a road. If there's an oil well site with actual land use, we draw it out as an oil well site. We know what non-crop land is, and you're not going to be putting in crop in a marsh area or inaccessible fields. You're not going to be cropping it. So the nice thing with actual land use, it kind of takes care of those types of things. So our land valuation rule set. We basically have a couple of different ways we value. For cropland is the only type that gets cropland values. It's based off of the productivity index. Non-cropland is things that are not cropped at all. It's just fields, or it's range for cows. It's based off of the animal unit month calculation. We take the pounds of air dry forage that's calculated by the NRCS, multiply that by 0.25. That is a number that the animals will eat about a quarter of the forage, then it still remains viable for regrowing. And you divide that by 913 pounds a month that they eat for a 1,000-pound steer or a cow-calf pair, and that calculates out to a number that we get here. For example, 2,000 pounds of forage times 0.25 gives us 500 pounds, divided by 913 gives us 0.55. That soil type will carry a half an animal for a month per acre. And we use this going forward to rack and stack the quality of the non-cropland soils. So we calculate these values. We'll show you that in a moment. Farmsteads and oil well sites are all at non-cropland values. Saltwater wells can be commercial wells or at commercial values. We handle those in the tax department. Private wells are at non-crop. Taxable rural residences at 2 acres at 2,000 an acre. Roads, it was decided that township certified roads, county roads, and state highways are going to be drawn out. We do not value those in ag land. Although they're valuable for utilization of ag land, they can't grow anything on them, so we're taking that out of the mix. And then commercial land, commercial structures, gravel pits are at commercial values. We handle those in the tax department. And then vacant land is at vacant land values. So what does this actually look like when we start putting all of this together? The left, we looked at this section previously. It has the NRCS soils layer on it. On the right-hand side, it's the same section with the actual land use drawn in. We have cropland on there, non-cropland, residential, roads, oil well sites, etc. And note that where they are cropping, you can compare the two. They are cropping these areas here, and it's drawn in. When you zoom in closer, you can see these areas are truly being cropped. And then the oil well sites are spelled out differently. And then please note, the portion of this oil well site was in cropland when they dropped the oil well site in there. This is one of those areas that was challenging to keep track of. And so right now, any oil well site, remember, is going to be valued just like non-cropland. And then note the road going through cropland is also calculated out and then considered non-cropland in valuation. So while we were looking at this, we had an idea about envisioning data. You know, here's a chart of some of the NRCS soils information. We have the map unit symbol, the map unit name, the productivity index PI, and some acreage information. And this is what it looks like, you know, on a section. Okay, so this is great data that we have. But when you zoom out, this is the northern part of Mountrail County, it becomes very nonsensical to try to make any sense out of this whatsoever. We still have the productivity index, map unit symbols, but you can't really see. We know there's a bunch of soils underneath there. So what we decided to do is take a look at the symbology in the ArcMap and then basically come up with a 10-step color change. The highest productivity index possible that you can have is 100, and it goes down from there. In Mountrail County, our highest is a 95. So we grouped the best soil is the darkest green at 91 to 95, and we just went down every 10 steps, changing the color in the rainbow down to the oranges and the red for the poorer soil types. And as you can see in a section, that's kind of interesting, but it really doesn't tell the story. But what does tell the story when we zoom out and we look at the entire county, that, my gosh, this really tells a story. And when we showed this map to farmers and ranchers, they could agree. Everybody knows the southern part of Mountrail County and Fertile, Banner, and Mountrail townships. They have the best soils down here, somewhat also in Model. But then also notice these areas that it's poorer soil types in here, like through Brookbank, they have poorer soils, and up in here. But what is really cool and what was really beneficial, when we dropped in the actual land use map and we do a comparison between these two, this is where the excitement really kicks in. Again, I asked you to pick your favorite spot on the Mountrail County map, and then now I want you to take that spot and compare it to the soils. What's really cool is the NRCS soils is from the soil scientists figuring out what are the better soils on here. The Mountrail County actual land use map is from the aerial photography interpretation saying where is the cropland and where's the non-cropland. And over the course of 100 or so years, farmers have figured out where is the best soil types to be farming. And this was really exciting for us in the county. So if we go back up here to lowland and we look at this triangle here, notice the better quality soils are listed up in here, and notice that same triangle is built in lowland. And if you look at those fluvial veins, you can see those fingers that are that are the poor soils and are not being cropped. If you look in this area here, cottonwood, sorkness, up into this area, you can see that there's poor soils in here. They're not cropping it, and yet you can see that those poor soils are right there also. And if you look down here in that Mountrail township, you can see that little curve that has the poor soils on it, and you can kind of see that happening here. Even though they are farming some of it still, we can see that. And then also this area in here between Plaza, Model, and Partial, and you can see that spelled out. So this visually told the farmers that we knew what we were doing, and it was very exciting the way we could get into discussions on those maps. Now, Sidwell has a farms program that sits and runs, and so basically all it does is it takes all this information on the map for the whole county. And if you note, I've kind of lightened up the colors a little bit, transparency, so you can see underneath them. But you have some cropland areas here, non-cropland areas here, oil well sites, some roads, there's a residence in there, and also the soils layer is put right on top. So what happens is it utilizes the soil types within actual land use, and farms basically think about it as a cookie cutter, just slices the actual land use and soil type layers into acres, and it's used for valuation. And what it does is it sticks it all together. So if you have like this C135D, which has some cropland and then non-cropland, and then C135D any place else like over here, it's put together, so it puts in all of the cropland, non-cropland, provides us lots of data. So this parcel gave us 32 rows of data. The entire county was 107,000 plus rows of data with all of this information associated with it. We get detailed acreage reporting out of this. Of course, we can pull that data into Excel, and with the magic of pivot tables, we can spin this data lots of different ways. We can do an overall county look at the county to see where everything is being drawn in at, and then we can also separate that out by township. These reports became very valuable for the township officers because they wanted to see how much oil well site acreage or how much gravel pit was in there and those types of things. So these became extra reports that benefited the owners greatly. Now the valuation on the actual land use, this is the same chart kind of. Remember that the breakpoint, we did the breakpoint here at 50 and we didn't have any values below here and then no values up here. But with actual land use, irregardless of soil type in there, if you are not cropping the best soil like up in here, it is still considered higher on the AUM side. So again, remember our non-cropland values are here 156 for the average, and based off of a weighted average, based off of acreages, that kind of comes in around here. So your better AUMs are going to have a higher value non-crop than your worst AUMs. Same thing with cropland soils. You're going to have your best cropland is going to be the highest valued, and then your lower values down here for the poor soils. Again, please remember, we do value every single soil type individually. So in between here, we have 95, 94, 93, 92, 91 with different values in between here and here. So we do have 150 on each side. So we have 300 different valuations for soils. So we process farms and the overall ag land values. And again, what we're looking at is cropland, non-crop, and oil well sites. The rest of it is valued separately. Again, for our entire county, at the percent of total value here is 462 million. And then also on the right-hand side, we can slice and dice these reports to get the valuations for each township. And then remember, this is by parcel, and we also have owner data in there. So what we can do is provide reports. If an owner says, hey, I want value of all my land separated by parcel or separated by township, can you get that to me? We say, yes, sure, no problem. We just crank those out for them. So just over 2 years ago, we were asking the question, how do we do this? We didn't know exactly, but this was our blank slate once we filled it in and we got going. GIS is the answer. Now you've seen these two maps already, the actual land use layer on the right, the NRCS soils quality layer, the actual land use on the left, soils quality on the right. But then what we wanted to look at was the average ag land value by parcel per acre. We want to look at so in other words, we took the parcel total value. Remember, parcels can be different sizes. They can be 160 acres, or they can be down to 4 acres, or 2 acres, or 1 acre. And what we wanted to do is, based off of the total value by parcel, take that total value, divide it by the acres for that parcel, and come up with a number. And then that number, we wanted to array that on the screen also. And so this is what this looks like. So what we have here is, you can see the lots of little boxes in there. Those are each of the individual parcels. You can see, like in here, there's a little real teeny parcel within another parcel block. But what is interesting with this map, when you array these across, the maps are telling all the same story. One of them is the actual land use. We are farming these areas here, like up in Lowland, this corner. The quality says, yep, that should be some land you should be farming. There's some little odd things in there. Don't worry about it. But look at the valuation. The valuation also came out with that triangle. You can look in the areas here, Cottonwood and Sorkness, the valuations. Poor soils in here. And then also they're not cropping it here. So it should be lower because the non-crop land values are lower. We come down here into Banner and Fertile and Mountrail. We see that little curve in here. And then also in Plaza, Model, and Partial, we have that area in here. So when you compare these maps, this helped our constituents know that we had this thing completely under control. What's exciting is these are basically 3 types of different data that are all mapped and all telling the same story. One is the land use, one is the quality, and this is kind of taking those two and mushing them together in our calculations. That's not all. We had a robust communication campaign. It was ongoing through the life of the project. We had several Soils Committee meetings, collaborative efforts for our rule sets, additional input and suggestions from them, attendance at all of our township review meetings. And remember, a couple of these folks were folks who were very much our opponents at that 2017 meeting. They became proponents with us. They owned the ag land solution. When we were in some meetings with people, some of the farmers would ask questions, and a couple of times these Soils Committee members jumped in with the words, well, when we did this. And so then me and my team, we kind of stepped back. We said, you answer the question, because then they have the trust of everybody because they're on that committee. We had articles in the official county paper. You can see that here. Presentations at the county commissioner meetings. We presented to them very frequently. Presentations at township officers meetings. You can see that's happening up here. I even presented to the Lions Club. We went and talked to anybody who had listened to us about this ag land valuation. We had township review meetings, 55 townships. We would do the ag land valuation overview, kind of a slide presentation to kind of explain to them what's going on. And then we reviewed and updated the individual's land for the actual land use. This is an example of how we set up our room for the meetings. We had computers set up so we could look things up online. This is a couple of the folks who are on our Soils Committee. This is my boss, Lori Hansen, the very bestest boss in the whole wide world. I know we're recording this, but I wanted it recorded for posterity. But what we did is, on these tables, we set it up into section, in a township section order. There's 2 copies on there. We went through lots of paper and lots of toner. The top copy was just the aerial photography, and then the copy underneath showed the actual land use that was drawn in. Farmers could look at that, compare it, and then if they had any qualms, if they said, no, that's not the way it is, we would just mark it up, get it, and then get it sent in for being updated. Not only that, we wanted to make sure that there is a website to go out to to go see, look at all this land. And yes, you too can go out and look at this website. Just search for Mountrail County GIS. We do have an ARC map online. Don't go to that one. Go to the Portico site, and you can pull it up. You can walk around Mountrail. You can see all the information that we have on here. It does come up with the land use layer on there, the colors. It does not now come up with the soils layer. You just have to go to the soils, to the layers area, and just turn on the soils if you wanted to see the soils. There's various search capabilities. You can put in name or parcel or, etc. We have several years of NAIP aerial photography. We have a high resolution 2019 out there right now. There's the actual land use layer, the soils layer. We also have valuation reporting. So you can go out and look at all this information, and our constituents could do the same. And here you can see an example of the land valuation reporting that's available on the Portico website. If you look over here, we have the land use as cropland or non-cropland, oil well sites, or roads. Please note the roads are valued at $0, like our rule set did say. And this takes the parcel that's over here on this side, calculates it out. It ignores, this is a different parcel here, so it doesn't include that. We have an oil well site, non-cropland, and then acres in there. And as you can see, in cropland, we have different values for the same soil types like it is in non-cropland. So let's look at the C132C, the William Zoll non-cropland, and an oil well site. It's brought in at $157.61 an acre, the lower value. But at the cropland acres, it's at C132C is at $634.39 per acre. Again, it calculates out the net acres associated with those, calculates the true and full value, and then it adds them all up. So out of this parcel, that's 147.3 acres. We have a value of 82,972.01, and in North Dakota, we round those to the closest 100. So in this instance, it would be $83,000 true and full value for the parcel. We handled valuation protests differently. We developed a request for ag land use review, process, and form. This was reviewed by the Tax Department Personnel, Soils Committee, and County Board of Equalization for concurrence. The result, we went from 60 very upset people to 12 reviews last year in 2019 and 2 reviews in 2020. And these 2 reviews were carryovers from here because we didn't get information sent to us. So we built a process. We have the owners give us some information, go get some FSA maps if need be to provide documentation to us, and then we correct it. We review it, Soils Committee reviews it, County Board of Equalization reviews it. So for protests, that helped us out a bunch. Now we saw this map here. This was the average acre value for 2019. This was for last year. But it was interesting that we thought, hey, let's look at this and look at the historical valuation, see what that average acre value was before we made this change. Previously, if we had changes in ag land value, it would be percentage changes up or down. We'd do it kind of on an overall scale. So it'd be interesting to kind of take a look. Now, the next slide I'm going to pull up, it kind of looks the same, but I'm going to point out some differences to you that probably would make you chuckle just a little bit. So this was the old method of valuing, and you can see lowland, this corner up here, yep, that triangle's there, and then in this area between Bicker and Sorkness and Cottonwood, yeah, kind of the same, and then kind of this stuff down here, these parcels are about the same. But look here at McAlmond Township. Before I came on board, there were individual township assessors in the state. And they would assess things, try to equalize things, and I'm not beating up anybody here. I mean, this is just the way things work out. Is this assessor, you know, he knew there were some higher quality soils and lower quality in here, and he assessed them this way. But notice the square and then the comparison with McGann up here. You can also kind of see the square in Kickapoo Township, Egan somewhat in there. You can kind of see it in Cottonwood. So even though the map is pretty close to being the same, it does show differences between the new method on the left and the old method on the right. And we got a much cleaner solution here on this valuation. The other thing I want to point out to you is, remember, this is average acre value by parcel. Here on the left, this new methodology, our highest valuation here is $906.29 average acre value. Look over here, the old method that's doing things here, up to $2,440. So what happened with this new method, we compressed these values together, and then when we showed this to the farmers and ranchers, they greatly appreciated it also. And you know, whenever the ShamWow guy shows up, there's more, and it's got to be really cool. So GIS is used for many things. It is extensible. And so we were sitting there thinking, what if? So we have these things out there that are gravel pits. And this is an example of a gravel pit, and it's drawn in as a gravel pit, and then that's all fine and dandy. But we have commercial values on those, and we internally have an active gravel pit and inactive gravel pit. Active is considered, it's either actively mining, there's inventory piles out there for sale, and the road's going to it. Inactive means they just haven't reclaimed it yet. It's been mined and it's just sitting. So this gravel pit above shows it's pretty much active, so we drew that in as being active, and that's 9.28 acres of active gravel pit. Now, mind you, certain gravel pits out there with active or inactive, there could be portions of it that are inactive, some that are active. Obviously, in this area here, it's been reclaimed. And so we can draw in different types of the valuation that's going to be in there, so we can identify what is active and inactive. So when we symbolize this, we have a gravel pit there on the bottom left, but when we look at the whole county, what we can do is we can look and find these bubbles here of gravel pits just by using a different symbology on that layer, so we can just jump right to those gravel pits as quick as we can. For valuation, we exported the data out to a report. We calculate the acres based off of the shape area. That's in square feet. We just take that divided by 43,560 to give us acres. And we apply active and inactive acres by parcel based off of activity. Down below is an example of a spreadsheet that gives us that information. We then, through the magic again of pivot tables, pull that data together so we can calculate out the total value by parcel. So what does that give us for the county? We have 1,225 acres of gravel pits total, 397 inactive, 828 active, for a total value of $1.420 million. We can again spread this information out through pivot tables by showing it by township. We can do it by parcel. We can do it by owner, etc. The same kind of method that we've done before. So this is new for us this year in 2020. We did the ag land valuation last year for 2019. We carried it forward this year, and it's worked very, very well. And again, with our number of protests dropping, people have gotten used to this methodology and appreciate it. And this next step here that we've extended our GIS into gravel pit valuation has helped us greatly. So please make a note of the following number for your continuing ed credits. The number is 1008. You need to complete the CE form located on the resources section of the conference website. I'm Rory Porth, North Dakota Class 1 Property Assessor. Please email me, give me a call, write my information down here. I would love to hear from you and hear what you think about this presentation. Again, we're at the end. If there's any questions, we will definitely take that up with the remaining time that we have. Thank you very much.